second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just rephrase it.
Yeah.
And we're back. We apologize for that. A little bit of a technical difficulty. A user contacted us and said they couldn't see the site. They could see it, but it was intermittent. If you're listening, we're responding to you right now by on Facebook. You can actually try and get the try number 3 at the bottom. It is a lower bandwidth, and you may be able to see it then. It depends on your internet connection. However, we have confirmed that we are broadcasting at very high speeds right now. So let us know and keep us posted if there's any issues. I want to go back to the second question here, second amendment to the Traffic Rule Act. And I will repeat that. An identification plate issued under this act shall cease to be valid regarding a motor vehicle to which it relates if the insurance cover of the motor vehicle issued pursuant to the Insurance Vehicle Party Risks Act Cap 405 or any other written law expires and is not renewed within 30 days of the expiry of the cover. And the owner of the motor vehicle shall forthwith surrender the identification plates to the Registrar of Motor Vehicles in the prescribed manner. So if you can, Baraza, please take a crack at that.
This is actually something that takes place in the UK. I know that for a fact. And what the law is saying essentially is you have to keep your car insured all the time.
All the time?
Yeah, whether it's parked or whether it's moving, it has to be insured all the time. And the grace period they're giving you in between insurance covers is 30 days.
I see.
Yeah, so if your insurance cover expires now,
yes,
you have exactly 30 days to renew it, otherwise they take your plates.
Now, so they are going to tie in a system of being able to check?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they will.
Okay.
It'll be similar to what they call the plate tags in the US.
Yes. Now, we don't have plate tags currently in Kenya.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, now that the taxman wants to start collecting the plates himself,
yes,
maybe that system will be sort of brought back, because once upon a time we had something very similar.
We did. At one time we did have that. It was, I think, taken off the shelf a few years ago.
Yeah, along with the road license.
Along with the road license. Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will keep more insured vehicles on the road, and that would be a good thing for all of us.
Yeah, and keep more people serious about motor vehicle ownership.
About motor vehicle ownership, correct. Our next amendment, number 3, a person who fails to surrender a license plate as required under this section commits an offence and shall be liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 30,000 shillings and, in addition, a fine of 10,000 shillings for every month during which the failure persists. So, if you could explain that to us, Baraza.
No, the first 2 amendments, the first one says that anytime the vehicle ownership is being transferred, you have to surrender your plates to KRA.
Yes.
And the second one says that if you stay more than 30 days without renewing your insurance policy, KRA will confiscate your plates. Actually, what I'm thinking is maybe you're supposed to surrender them.
It looks like you may have to
sort of sell yourself out and say, I'm sorry, I've not renewed my insurance, here are the plates. Now, what the third amendment says is that if you don't do that, the immediate fine is 30,000 shillings.
Yes.
That is if they catch you. If they catch you 4 months later,
yes,
you will pay the 30,000 shillings and 10,000 shillings per month for those 4 months.
For those 4 months after.
That you have kept your plates.
So that would come to 70,000 if you spent 4 months not surrendering your plates.
So, yeah.
Okay, they're quite expensive. It's not worth the plates. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. The next amendment is number 4. A person who, when driving or attempting to drive, or when in charge of a motor vehicle on a road or other public place, is under the influence of drink or drug to such an extent as to be incapable of having proper control of the vehicle, commits an offence and shall be liable upon conviction to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years or to a fine not exceeding 500,000 shillings or both. If you would shed some light on that one, please.
That is, the amendment affects drink driving.
Yes.
Essentially what it says is that drink driving is an offence.
Yes.
And once again, if you're caught, there are two or three things that you're looking at. One, you're facing a possible jail term of up to 10 years.
Yes.
Another one is facing a possible fine of up to 500,000 Kenya shillings.
Yes.
And from my article today, it said if the judge does not really like your face, he's going to hit you with both.
He's going to hit you with both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spend the 10 years and you still give me 500,000 shillings at the end of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have one thing. I'm going to go back to the question here. Is a particular part in this question, in this amendment, is under the influence of drink or alcohol to such an extent. So this is rather vague to me. To such an extent, meaning that if they are drunk but they can manage to drive, they'll be okay. Or
yeah, when they say to such an extent as to be incapable of having proper control of the vehicle.
Yes.
They won't ask you to prove that you can still control the vehicle. I think they'll bring back that alcometer thing of theirs. They're normally legal limits set a certain number of grams per so many milliliters of blood.
Yes.
The concentration of alcohol in your blood. So even if you can hold your liquor well, if you drink too much, just don't drive.
Just don't drive. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yes. And as far as the alcohol meter, I know they had introduced that a few years ago, and then it was taken off the shelf. It is being reintroduced. How are they going to apply this for drugs? How will they do drug testing on the spot?
Well, drug testing, I don't know about the government policy, but the best way to do a drug test will be to get a blood sample and submit it for is it gas chromatography or whatever they do to check what is inside your blood?
Yes, okay. So basically, I would suggest, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that we have to get away from the culture of drinking and driving.
Yeah, or using drugs and driving.
Yes, and using drugs and driving, I'm sorry. And we should try and keep our roads safe for the sake of our fellow citizens and our future children, the future generations.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question, the next amendment. Number 5, a person who, when driving or in charge of, or during any period of duty in connection with the driving of a public service vehicle, drinks any intoxicating liquor, commits an offence, and shall be liable upon conviction to imprisonment for a term not less than 10 years, or to a fine not less than 500,000 shillings, or both. It's principally the same amendment, but this applies to public service vehicles.
Yes, and also, the first one said, don't drink and drive.
Yes.
This other one is saying, don't drink while driving.
While driving. Yeah. So you cover both.
Yeah. Though the second one is a bit more specific and mentions PSV cars. I don't know if they're telling us that we can be drinking while driving for those of us who don't drive PSVs, provided the moment you start getting drunk, you surrender your car. Yes. I don't know if that's what they're telling us.
You know, I had heard from somebody a few years ago about this drinking and driving, and they said, well, I don't drink and drive, I drink first, then I drive.
But to be a bit serious, common sense dictates don't drink and drive, don't drink while driving, don't drink and then drive.
The two don't mix, period. And no one should attempt to try and master that. It'll never happen.
Yeah, it will never. Maybe you drive and then drink.
Drive then drink by all means.
When you're sure you're not going to move again.
Yes, so when you get to your destination, by all means open your bottle. Enjoy yourself then. Moving on to the next amendment. Number 6, no motor vehicle shall, in order to avoid a buildup of traffic on a road, be driven on or through a pavement or a pedestrian walkway or a petrol station, as the case may be. A person who contravenes this subsection commits an offence and shall be liable upon conviction to imprisonment for a term not less than 3 months, or to a fine of not less than 30,000 shillings, or both. Now this is a very interesting one because you see this all the time. Now, usually the traffic users that you see this with are matatu drivers and motorcyclists.
Yeah. I'll confess I've also done it once or twice, but not
I think
anymore.
we all have.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's sensible, but as I've observed it mostly in matatus, because this rule has been enforced for quite a while. It's just that it's only now that it has been made public. There are times when I've been in a matatu and they try and pull that stunt of driving through a petrol station to circumvent traffic.
Yes.
But once inside the petrol station, if they spot a policeman, they'll stop and pretend that they were buying fuel.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's going to be a bit tricky deciding whether that person has actually bought fuel or not.
Yes.
Though, okay, if they stop, at least whatever they're trying will have been to no avail. Because once you stop in the petrol station until you're sure the policeman is not looking again, or until you're sure you've spent time long enough for it to seem that you've bought fuel, then drive off. Whoever you are trying to get round will have disappeared.
Yes.
You might as well have just stayed behind him. But that is for petrol stations. That might be a grey area. The rest are very, very clear. Driving on pedestrian paths and on pavements, that is definitely a no-no.
Now you addressed largely the matatus. You see motorcyclists, especially in Nairobi, when traffic congestion is at its peak. taking a sidewalk, splitting through traffic, and in fact even going through petrol stations sometimes. Do you think motorcyclists are in the same are subject to the same laws?
Yeah, they are subject to the same laws, but the problem is they'll be much harder to catch.
That's true. They will be much harder.
They'll be much harder to catch, which is why I think they also do that. They tend to do some very outrageous things. I've even seen some of them driving on the wrong side of a dual carriageway, right past a policeman, because if the policeman gives chase, by the time he catches up with him, the people he's living at the roundabout or at the junction are going to run wild. Now that there's no more.
It's true that I would say matatus tend to be more of the culprits in this, but motorcyclists tend to flaunt the laws a lot more. Lack of helmets, lack of safety equipment, and riding wherever they feel like it. So if there are motorcyclists out there, you maybe you want to pay some attention to this particular law. This affects your riding style to a great deal. Our next amendment is number 7. The Principal Act is amended in Section 46 by deleting the words, "a term not exceeding 10 years, and the court shall exercise the power conferred by Part 8 of cancelling any driving license or provisional driving license held by an offender, and declaring the offender disqualified for holding or obtaining a driving license for a period of 3 years starting from the date of conviction or the end of any prison sentence imposed under this section, whichever is the latter, appearing immediately after the words imprisonment for and substituting therefore the word life." Little too legal jumbo for me, but maybe you can shed some light. Oh, this is for sentencing under the Act.
No, for sentencing.
Yeah, so this is in relation to sentencing as opposed to, let's say, general traffic.
Yeah, I think they've modified the penalty for that particular section of the law from just a simple prison term to also include cancelling of a driving license.
I see.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past you would get a sentence, but you would keep your driving license.
Yeah, you come back and continue driving.
I see.
But this time, as soon as you are, depending on what the judge says, from what I've gotten from that law, depending on what the judge says, the suspension of your driving license or cancellation might start either the moment he convicts you, which means the moment your fine becomes active.
Yes.
I mean, the moment he tells you that to pay a fine, or if you choose to go to jail, if you can't afford the fine, as soon as you are released, now the suspension of the driving license begins then.
Yes.
So if you get the 10 years and the 3-year suspension, for 13 years after you commit the offense, you're not going to be driving anything.
That's quite a penalty.
Yeah, quite a penalty.
And without a car, if you've been used to a car, going back to matatu is very difficult.
Yeah, it will not be easy.
It will not be easy. Okay, moving on to the next amendment. Number 8, the driving license of a person who has been convicted for the violation of a speed limit prescribed shall be invalidated for a period not less than 3 years if the violation of the limit is up to 10 kilometers per hour and the violation is repeated 3 or more different times. A little confusing for me, if you don't mind explaining or clarifying that one for me.
Okay, I got it, but I found it a bit harsh. Basically what it says is, we have speed limits.
Yes.
Let's say the speed limit within the town limits or city limits is 50 kilometers per hour. So if you exceed it by up to 10 kilometers per hour, let's say you're doing 60 in a 50 zone,
yes,
or on the highway, they say that the limit is 110 and you're doing 120,
yes,
you'll be caught the first time. Whatever happens, happens. It won't be that bad. Maybe an on-the-spot fine or something. You'll be caught the second time. Now the third time, they'll suspend your license and fine you.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the cancellation of the license is what they've explained there. The thing is, we know most cars have very inaccurate speedometers, especially once you start changing tire sizes. From episode 1 of AutoTalk Live,
that's right.
I was talking about tire sizes and how they tend to throw off the speedometer.
Yes.
If you've changed tire sizes and your speedometer has an error of up to 13 or 15 kilometers per hour, then that really puts you in trouble. Either you drive really slowly, in which case you're going to become an obstruction, or you start gambling.
Yes.
So if you're arrested, if they cancel your license.
I'm just curious. We've all experienced it where we get stopped for all sorts of reasons. How is this going to be something that they can enforce? Are they going to do roadside checks? Are they going to have a computer system that they can check your driving license against to see if you have a previous conviction?
I think that will go down to court records. Or maybe they'll change their licenses to be keeping track of the previous violations.
Like a smart card?
Yeah, sort of like a smart card. I'm thinking that is the route that they'll be taking.
Yeah, very likely. I mean, the thing is, if they have to stop everyone for speeding, that's quite a large percentage of the population.
Yeah.
If they all end up at the police station waiting for record checks, it's going to drain the system down.
Yeah.
So there must be a more, a seamless way of checking and enforcing this rule. Anyway, time will tell, and we'll see what happens.
But either way, the government has still put a lot of work on itself because of this number 8 law. Once you're in court, the prosecutor has to prove that you are doing that speed.
Yes.
He has to prove. And as it is, video evidence in court is still a 50-50 affair. There are those that will be rejected, those that will be accepted.
Yeah.
And without video evidence, it's the prosecutor's word against yours. Just tell the judge I was not doing that speed. I wasn't.
But the hassle is not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not worth the hassle. If anyone's ever been to court, you know you're going to wait and wait.
They'll understand that this may take longer than the 3 years of penalty that you'll be facing.
Yes, correct. So just drive safe.
Yeah.
Our next amendment, number 9. Every driver and every conductor of a public service vehicle shall wear a special badge and uniform. The uniform referred to shall be prescribed by the Registrar of Motor Vehicles and shall, in the case of a driver, be navy blue in color, and in the case of a conductor, be maroon in color. The special badges required shall be provided by the Registrar of Motor Vehicles upon satisfaction of all requirements and upon payment of the prescribed fee. This is a very strange law dictating what that there are uniforms, and this is not for government public service vehicles. These are for any business that has a PSV license. So basically, they're dictating what other companies' uniforms will be.
Yeah, true that. And it's okay. It is a little harsh, but by now we are used to it because that particular law, along with a few others, came under what used to be called the Michuki rules.
Yes.
Remember the late Honorable Michuki came up with a set of laws that really shook up the industry.
Although it had a very good impact.
Yeah, it did have a good impact.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is just an extra enforcing of the law, just reminding these people that the law actually still exists, and if you think you have a very large, particularly bus companies, they're the ones who tend to have their own union.
Yes.
If you think your company is larger than the government, then they'll show you exactly
Yes.
who makes the laws around
Who makes the laws? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the special requirements for PSVs was at least 4 years driving experience for the normal 14-seater matatus.
Yes.
Then for a bus, you must be at least 20 years old.
Okay.
And up to 5 years experience driving a heavy commercial vehicle. Those are for the drivers. Over and above that, not for both drivers and conductors, you also have to get a certificate of good conduct.
Okay.
Now, the certificate of good conduct is what we were discussing in the previous law, the records. If you have prior records. That certificate of good conduct is picked up from CID.
It is picked up from CID.
And then they have the records of all the people they have arrested and convicted.
Yes.
So if they've once been on your case, you don't get a certificate of good conduct. They don't want criminals operating these vehicles.
That's good for all of us.
Yeah, it's good for all of us.
Good for all of us. So the next amendment is number 10. Every driver of a public service vehicle shall undergo compulsory testing after every 2 years to ascertain his or her competence. This is an unusual change in our laws. We are so used to getting a driving license once.
And then that's it.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So how do you see this changing the future of driving?
Not much, because much as the PSV drivers tend to misbehave, they know the laws. Believe me, they do. They actually know those laws better than we do.
Yes.
It's just that for the sake of business, they tend to contravene those laws. But I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to achieve with that law, because if the PSV drivers went through school and they're driving daily, they're always being reminded by traffic police, this is the law, this is the law, this is the law. If you keep testing them for competence, they'll perform better than even people like us.
Correct. They have more experience and time behind the wheel.
They'll just keep performing better, but once he gets back in his matatu, drive on pavements, through petrol stations, and what people call overlapping.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what exactly they're trying to achieve with this law, but anyway, you can look at it from a socio-political point of view. It's going to create employment for the testers.
That's true. It will, yeah.
And maybe government revenue, because I'm sure you'll be paying for that competence test.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing for free.
Yeah, there's nothing for free. Especially not from the government.
No. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm sorry, I left that one. Okay. Number 11. Every owner of a public service vehicle shall employ at least one driver and one conductor who shall be the holder of a certificate of good conduct issued by the relevant authority. This somehow ties into the question before last.
Yeah. About the good conduct and not having criminals operating your cars. Because I'll say this from experience. Late last year, I had an incident. I was kidnapped actually in a matatu.
You're kidding me.
I was kidnapped in a matatu and given a beating for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so luckily the police were quick to act.
Yes.
So that was, they caught up with us at about 2 a.m., 2 to 30 a.m. And they managed to get me out of that situation and the people involved were arrested. But now to prevent such incidences from happening, let's say the people I was with got the registration of the matatu.
Yes.
Submitted to the police find the owner and they ask the owner who's the driver of your matatu. Before, back in the days, the Primichuki days, the owner would say, I'm not sure, because there's a morning driver, a midday driver, an afternoon driver, then the Mungeki driver, and then the estate driver. So I'm not sure who is who. But now the government requires that you have one driver and one conductor.
So they're holding one person accountable.
Yeah. They'll ask the owner, which is actually what happened in my situation.
Yeah.
They traced the owner. They asked him, who did you give this vehicle to? He mentioned his driver. His driver was one of the people who were arrested. So his driver was asked, why did you give the car to these other people? He claimed that he was also jacked.
I see.
Yeah, so to prevent this kind of scenario from happening, it's always good to have someone accountable. If your PSB goes and does an offense, they know who they'll get. They'll go to the owner will point him to the driver.
Yeah.
And it's up to the driver to explain what exactly was happening with the car.
I see.
Makes it a lot easier to...
So this is designed more to hold somebody accountable.
Yeah.
And to be able to track back to the original.
Yeah, it's for accountability.
It's for accountability.
Yeah.
That's another very positive change in the law.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the next one, number 12. Every conductor or driver of a public service vehicle shall only take up employment as such upon being vetted and shall be paid a permanent monthly salary by the owner of the public service vehicle.
The vetting ties in with the certificate of good conduct. It's more or less the same point in using a different phrase. But the monthly salary, no, I don't know how they plan to enforce that.
Yes.
We are thinking, the first time that came up, that was also under the Michuki rules. The reason behind that was for the sake of taxing. These people don't pay taxes because they are paid in cash. Whatever they make during the day, they give the owner his cash, the owner pays them in cash, and whatever they made over and above that, they keep in their pockets. Now, there are no records of this.
Yes.
Matatus, you just give out coins and you don't get tickets in exchange.
Yes.
So there's no telling whether the Matatu made 3,000 shillings today or 30,000. So I'm thinking the reason why they want the conductors to be earning a monthly salary is for the sake of taxation. The government has to make money off these people to support them.
And this way they can probably look at that conductor's records in more detail to see how, based on, let's say, a 30,000 shilling salary, they're able to afford a much bigger house than anyone else.
And it was also maybe for the sake of issuing fines in court.
That's
the fines that were mentioned in the other laws.
Yes, yes.
They look at your pay slip and decide you look like you can pay 500,000 shillings, so please pay us 500,000 shillings.
The government's very clever.
Really clever.
Yes.
Crafty is the word.
Okay. Number 13. A person who contravenes or fails to comply with the provisions of this section commits an offence and shall be liable, upon conviction, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 months or to a fine of not less than 10,000 shillings or both.
So I'm guessing that is the uniform, the certificate of good conduct and the monthly salary.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we've been looking at. So failure to comply with that, in essence, you're facing 12 months in prison or 10,000 shillings fine.
We've broken off.
Number 13.
Yes.
Yeah, in essence, what it says is that the last 4 or 5 laws that we've looked at, the ones concerning the uniform, the certificate of good conduct, the requirements for before you get the special badge from whatever authority.
Yes.
If you fail to follow the protocol on that, you're facing a year in jail or a fine of 10,000 shillings, or as usual, again, both.
Yes.
Yeah, but for some of them, they can be enforced, like the uniform. It's very easy to catch a driver or a conductor who's not in uniform.
Yes.
Then about the monthly salary, I don't know how they plan to do it. They might tie it in with the vehicle records. If you've registered your car as a as a public service vehicle,
Yes.
a bus or a matatu, then maybe you might have to submit also the driver's paycheck and
details.
a copy of his pay slip and the conductor's also.
To attach him to that vehicle.
Yeah.
Yes. That may be the case. It's interesting. We're going to see some very big changes in the actual practice or enforcement of these amendments.
Yeah,
And we'll see that in a very short time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So with that, we've come to the end of our Q&A, the end of our discussion on the new traffic rules. Please thank you for your time, and please join us on our next show, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, next Wednesday is a holiday. So we'll be coming back in the new year.
Yeah, should be third.
The third, yes.
Yeah, should be the third.
Excuse me. So please join us on the 3rd. This gives us enough time between now and then to add some more features. We plan to do some interviews. We plan to bring some reviews, vehicle reviews. We're going to add a lot more exciting things to this show. This is our 2nd show, so please bear with us. We're growing. Thank you for spending time with us, and I will pass this off to Baraza for his...
Thank you so much for watching, and let's meet in the new year.
Yes. And from both of us, we wish you a Happy New Year, and thank you for being with us, and we'll see you.
And a Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you as well, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay.